Can't start video. Okay, and make sure when you say now open up your got it. Oh shoot, should I pause? The Holocaust Center. Mark wrote about Norman in the Orlando Sentinel, and he's a longtime, very accomplished journalist and an author who's written books and numerous articles concerning the Christian-Jewish relations, anti-Semitism, racism, and more. With this and other shared interests that brought him and Norman together, and he has agreed graciously to speak on Harry's behalf about Dr. Norman M. Wall and his contributions to society and to our program. So with that, Mark, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Steve. Again, my name is Mark Pinsky. I'm standing in for Harry Wall, as Steve said, who is Norman's real son. But for a decade or more, Norman Wall and I had lunch once a week, sometimes twice a week, for more than 10 years. That time I was living about 5 minutes from where most of you are sitting now in Maitland. And I began to think of Norman as my surrogate father. And I thought that was a unique relationship until much later, after Norman passed away, and I attended a memorial service for Norman up in Pennsylvania. And there was a whole parade of doctors who said Norman was my surrogate father. Norman was my surrogate father. So that's the kind of charismatic person Norman was. Norman was born in 1914, the youngest of 9 children, to an immigrant peddler who turned storekeeper in a small town in eastern Pennsylvania. Norman was a warrior for the Jewish people his whole life, and also an advocate of civil rights and human rights as well. He attended the University of Pennsylvania and its medical school on scholarship at a time when the University of Pennsylvania had a quota for Jews. Still, Norman was able to attend. Growing up in a small town in Pennsylvania, Norman told me he rarely experienced any anti-Semitism. It was only when he came to Philadelphia to attend the University of Pennsylvania that he was subjected, he said, bombarded by anti-Semitism, both as an undergraduate and as a medical student. It was something he carried with him all his life. The upside of that was that growing up in a small town, Norman didn't have a lot of exposure to Jewish background. So almost as a defense mechanism, when he was at Penn, he began exploring what Judaism really was. He attended classes at Gratz College in Philadelphia and became very much involved in Judaism. Then after medical school, World War II intervened. Norman joined the US Army Medical Corps, first as a major, and I think then later as a colonel. He served in various posts in North Africa. And at one point he ended up in Tel Aviv, which was then part of British mandated Palestine. And while he was there doing his job for the American military, because of his Jewish consciousness, he reached out to members of the Jewish underground, the Haganah, which was then resisting British occupation. And he contacted his counterpart in the Haganah, who was the Chaim Shiba, who was the chief medical officer for the Haganah. And at some point, the base where Norman was in Tel Aviv was scheduled to be closed down, and he was going to be moved on to back to Africa. There were a lot of surplus equipment and supplies, which the US military was unable to take with them. And so Norman, keeping an eye out for the Jewish people, contacted Dr. Shiba, and very informally, in Norman's Jeep, began driving around the base, collecting surplus medical supplies and equipment. That was turned over to the medical division of the Haganah. And in Israeli history, that is credited with the beginning of a medical center called Shiba Medical Center, after Dr. Chaim Shiba, and also called Tel HaShomer, which today is one of the largest medical facilities in the Middle East. After the war, Norman returned to what he thought was going to be a stellar national or international medical career. He had a prestigious fellowship with the Leahy Institute Clinic in Boston. and then Montefiore Hospital in Pittsburgh, where he met Jonas Salk, with whom he continued to have contact. However, during the war, Norman's father died, and rather than look out for himself and his own career, he decided it was his obligation to return to a small town in Pennsylvania to support his large family. It was a blow, he said, but he felt that responsibility, and so that's why he decided to come back. And what was bad luck for Norman, or bad situation for Norman, was a good situation for Eastern Pennsylvania, because in a nearby small town was a Catholic order of nuns, medical nuns. And the Mother Superior, when she learned that this bright young Penn graduate had come back to her little town, called him in and said, what if I built you a hospital here? Would you be willing to be chief medical officer? And Norman was always concerned about other people's sensibilities and feelings, said, well, sister, you know, I'm Jewish and this will be a Catholic hospital. And the Mother Superior said, well, you take care of the medicine, I'll take care of the prayers. And so in fact, she built this hospital. Norman guided it for many years and treated many, many people, oftentimes without charge. Among his patients, this was coal country in Eastern Pennsylvania. Among his patients were miners who would come in with lung ailments. And the company doctors wanted to say that their ailment was pneumonia. But Norman soon realized it was something else. It was connected to their work in the coal mines. And he wrote one of the first clinical papers on a disease called pneumoconiosis, which later had become known as black lung. And he did some really pioneering work in that regard. Despite his standing in Eastern Pennsylvania, and he was very much beloved there for all the work that he did, he was considered almost a secular saint by the time he left. A local country club would not let him in because they didn't admit Jews. Now, in the grand scheme of things, this is a small matter, obviously, we understand that, but it bugged Norman. And it just got under his skin. And so he began a years-long campaign to open up this country club to Jews and also to African Americans and Catholics as well. He won, ultimately. When Norman got involved in a struggle for human rights or against anti-Semitism, you couldn't shake him. He would keep fighting until he won. Although this was a small thing in the grand scheme of things, to belong to a country club, that fight brought him together with the Anti-Defamation League. And they helped him, and when he won, he decided to help them. And he became very active in the Anti-Defamation League, working against anti-Semitism and also in favor of human rights as well. Norman retired from his medical career in the early 1990s and left Eastern Pennsylvania and moved to Central Florida. There he looked around, as Norman always did, for how he could help the Jewish community, but also the larger community. And that led him, I suppose, inevitably to the Holocaust Center, where you're sitting right now. He became friends with Abe and Tess Wise, and he asked what he could do to help them. And he devoted the last years of his life to serving on the board of the Holocaust Center and endowing the program that you're now in. Harry, I spoke with Harry recently, and Harry wanted me to emphasize, and it's true, that while Norman fought for many years against anti-Semitism, he was also concerned about social justice for all. He was active in the community and national civil rights issues. He was a man of faith, but he was also active in many interfaith programs. He was an advocate for equitable health care for all, and he personally practiced that while a doctor at the head of the hospital. I should also say that although Norman and I knew each other from the time he was 89 to when he passed and when he was 99, he couldn't stop practicing medicine. Although in his 90s, he still was able to write script for prescriptions. And he would sit on his front porch in Heathrow, not far from where you are, and friends and neighbors would come by without an appointment for informal medical exams, not exams, medical advice. And Norman was always very helpful, always happy to help people. And in many cases, people, his neighbors, friends and neighbors came to him and said they were having trouble getting in to see a specialist. And that's where Norman excelled. Norman would just pick up the phone, call the specialist's office and say, this is Dr. Wall calling. I want you to make an appointment for this person or that person. Norman died at the age of 99 in 2013, still vigorous, clear-headed, and committed to the survival of the Jewish people. As we Jews say, Zichrona Livracha, may his memory be a blessing. So thank you very much, and I hope I've told you a little bit about Norman Wall, the namesake of the program that you're in now. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Steve.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mark. Thank you so much. So with that, what we'll do is actually, we're gonna go ahead and leave this as part of this opening session. We're not gonna make anyone go to the next session. So just leave it open as is. And we'll just press on through there. I have to thank the Wall family and their generous donations. We are able to get the stipends funding as well as this fancy new equipment that we have here, which hopefully has made things easier for some people to attend, but being able to zoom in, so there's nothing better than having a camera that can zoom in features when you're standing in front of everything. But let me just do this little quick share of the session here and make sure I've got this. We're going to call a session. This is listed as obstacles to education. You'll see my name pop up there. Stephen Pointer's in the waiting room. And I'll make sure all of my stuff is off and we'll get back into the presentation. I will, let's see. There we go. And can you make me a co-host, please? And I believe that will have to be done by Reed. Just find my name. Yes, let's make me a co-host. Perfect. And I will get back. Okay. So we're going to get into, I just really want to talk about the week quickly. Those of you who are going to be able to be here during the week, each one of the sessions, there's a lot going on during this week. We really tried to design the Institute in a way that hopefully it allowed you a little bit of time to sleep in. Those of you who are high school teachers, I'm sure you thought, why aren't we having it in the morning? Come on, that sounds fantastic, because we know everyone operates so well. And I tried not to have it cut in too much of your day as well. So for those of you who are already going like, I had already had people posting like, on Friday, can we go ahead and like cut this down to like, and that way we'll leave early. And I'm like, so I was leaving pretty early. But again, it's up to you guys. I really want this to get the most. I want you to get the most out of this session. For those of you who attended last year, the session requirements are that you attend. Everyone who's online, if you are online, Whova does this great little tool of tracking you, whether you actually are in and watching the sessions or not, even if you're watching post or after the session. So I know whether you've actually gone and engaged in the sessions, is that you, and if everyone hopefully did the poll in the beginning to look at the requirements if you're trying to qualify for the stipend. I have to be particular because I only asked for so many stipends. Last year I asked for a lot, and then I had half people didn't actually participate enough to qualify. And in case, for those of you who've never written a grant before, if you ask for money and you don't use it, people don't like it. It doesn't go well, so I need to use it all. So if you say you're going to be here, it helps me out immensely, or else I ask for limited stipends. I did go back and ask for 65 instead of 45 for the stipends, so that increased the number. So I hope everyone would like to qualify, as well as we are getting our shipments of books in. And Dr. Barenbaum has even, has offered a number of his own books that I'll bring out and I'll show you guys. It's a pretty amazing little set of books that we'll bring out, and they will all be shipped to you after the sessions are over. Requirements is that you post questions. If you're here in person, that you are engaging in person, that you post a question per session and plus a session reflection. When I say a session reflection, those are geared, you'll actually see a link in the description of each session that is a link to a Google form. You can do them at the end, you can do them at the end of the day. The sessions are primarily relating to when we have our guest speakers and people, like, I don't necessarily need a reflection on this session here. There'll be a link in the session itself that's at the very top of the session description in the agenda. And you'll see that link, that Google form. It's very simple, just 3 things you got from the session and how you'll take it back to the classroom and how you can use it. If you can, we'd like to know that. I'd also like to know, feedback on the speakers as well, because, we have speakers come in, we want to make sure the topics are engaging. We really try to make sure, I'm working with people like with amazing educators like Mitch, Alex, and others who have maintained contact to try to really work on getting content and that you don't typically see, because there's a lot of online content. And I hope you saw from some of the topics that we've posted there, a lot of them are very different, very unique. Dr. Richard Plavniks is going to talk about, pre and post-Soviet, Holocaust responses to the Holocaust. We're going to be talking about the bystander effect in nations. Jerzy Volchek is in Poland. He's going to do a guided tour of Auschwitz, and he's actually in Poland. He's done live tours. This will be very unique. Now, this is one session. We do have you coming in at 9 for, because he does a 2-hour presentation. And because of where he is, it kind of creates this window for how he does the tour. I cannot record that session. He's asked that we not record it, just out of appropriateness. So we're not going to be recording that session. So I recommend, if you're going to see that session, that you watch it live or be here with us in person. He takes time for amazing questions. We've actually seen him use this tour. He's actually done this in Winter Park High School for students. It's really very powerful. We have some wonderful survivors. We've got Gidon Lev, who I found via TikTok. Oddly enough, he has 3 million followers on TikTok. If you haven't found that, it's GIDONLEV. And those of you who are saying, I don't use TikTok, well, that's good. But honestly, it's a great way to reach a younger audience. And I love one thing that he's told me. He says, I'm trying to meet students where they're at, not where he gives a lot of great examples. But he and his wife Julie will be speaking. They'll be speaking to us from. He normally is in Israel. He's actually going to be in California. I tried to get him to come here, but he's not able to. I know he's very upset at seeing all of the violence going on right now in the United States, especially in the schools. He's been posting a lot in social media about some of the things that he's seen. And then Suzanne Schneider. Suzanne Schneider is one of our local Holocaust survivors. She's going to share her story. She's going to come here live. She'll be sitting right here. And Ruth back here, Ruth Marchwinsky. Ruth is a 2nd-generation Holocaust survivor. Her father survived the Holocaust. Ruth is going to interview Suzanne because it'd be so much more engaging than having me interview her. And Ruth is fantastic and very passionate. And I'm just eager to see if Ruth will, because Ruth is very emotional and very, she's so much better. I'm such a cold person when I talk to people, and Ruth is so passionate, and I love to hear her talk. So everyone will have to break out tissues that day because Ruth is very, passionate. And we've got a lot, we have a lot to cover. We're going to hear from Mitch, who's going to talk about responses to the Holocaust in the Black press. And also Dr. Let's see if I've missed anybody. I don't think so. And Dr. Rabbi Stephen Engel is going to talk about contemporary anti-Semitism. And honestly, if you don't think that is an issue, it is so prevalent today, and more so, not just from Holocaust denial to images of swastikas that are up to synagogues being attacked. It's prevalent today more so than ever. So with this, we're gonna kind of have our first activity. And I know you're thinking, wow, the same way that students do, you're lucky I didn't get everyone in a Nearpod. And because I was really close, and I've already seen those looks like, oh God, really? I've had people fight me on it, said, y'all are worse than the students who want to fight me on Nearpod. Nearpod's such a great way to actually see if you really participate or not. Those of you who are there, I know some people are thinking like, I need to get back to, I don't know what the good game is now, to Candy Crush on my phone, or like, you know, browsing through Lord knows what. But so I'm going to ask if I could get some of my folks in the back to grab these the pink index cards that are on the back table and pass them out to everyone along with a pen. Everyone online, I want you to think about answers to these questions. You don't have to post them online. We're going to put you into breakout groups online in just a minute. But what I'll take a minute at home to think about the answers to these questions. Something that people will be surprised to learn about you, and what were your biggest obstacles to education this past year? These are the questions I'd like you to kind of write down the answers to. I know you know your name. You know. Just take 2 minutes, or take 3. We'll do 3 minutes. And those of you at home can also join in. We're going to test this breakout group thing on Zoom as well. That'll be interesting. And if everyone does a good job, I'll have everyone go to lunch. Woohoo! Already, it's like you just got here and it's. And when I say biggest obstacles to education, something you really personally encountered. If you want to be general, you can, but if you have something specific that you know you really fought with, whether it be something at your school, something at the government level, I mean, it depends. Every person might be different, but. And those of you who are online, if you are not an educator, what do you see? Those of you who are online, I have got some people who are not educators. Everyone, we're all educators, but those of you who are not teachers in a classroom, what do you see in the world today that you think the biggest obstacles to education are, especially in the past year? I'll answer really quick. Oh. So those of you who are online, I have some people, I'm just going to let you guys know what I see. I have some people who are quick writing who know exactly, and I have some people who are really trying to process this. We're going to do, in about 1 minute, we're going to do breakout rooms online for you guys to talk. I'm going to give you guys just a minute to think about it. And then we're going to do breakout rooms based off of the numbers. Mm-hmm. And then I'd like you all, my online guests, I appreciate you all being online. Do me a favor, please. I would like you to at least, if you can, bring up your cameras if you're able to, but try to participate. It's one of the requests that we have. If you're going to engage with us, we'd like for you to be able to be put in a breakout room. If you were in a breakout room with someone who is not on, that's fine. Just speak with the guests that you have that are on with you. Okay, you want to go ahead and we'll go ahead and put them in the breakout rooms for their discussions. Yeah. Okay. All right. So everyone online is in a breakout room. I've never used the breakout room feature in Zoom, so this will be really interesting to see if it actually works or if it's something that I've bombed at totally. So is everyone here okay? So I'd like y'all to do is do me a favor, find someone who's around you and swap cards and discuss and
Should I tell the breakout people?
Yeah, tell them we're in the breakout sessions. And then admit. Yeah, admit all. Just yeah, you can always hit just admit all, and it will just.
If I hit admit all.
And what?
It will mute him.
Oh, it does.
Yeah.
Oh, that's weird. Okay. I'm getting ready to. I mean, we're closing out the session. Yeah. Okay. We're gonna go ahead and come back together. Everyone is back from online. We're gonna bring it on back here and make sure we give enough time here. So, who here, and hopefully you guys can engage online as well. But your biggest obstacle was engagement. Did anybody put their biggest obstacle was student engagement? Anybody? Okay. Okay. What would you have?
Well, I think it's because of COVID, and part of the frustration is they got used to kind of doing what they wanted to do. So to get them engaged in something right now, sometimes it was a challenge.
Yeah, definitely. I've seen. I'd go into a lot of classrooms and I'd see cameras off, and students say, they trying to get, especially with students who were still working from home, and then when they came back. So my personal share, my fiance, she's an administrator at Avalon Park Elementary, and she described it quite like, she said, it's like Lord of the Flies. She goes, she's been there. She's been in education for 24 years. And that's all she's done. That's all since she got out of college, which means she's done. But she's just kind of like, pulling her hair out, but she's really working really hard. And she said it's honestly getting the kids re-socialized, especially elementary school students who spent 2 years at home, who are now coming into school, who have no idea of any personal boundaries, socialization skills. You're having to learn everything on the fly, and getting and other issues with support. What they put down.
My biggest thing was attendance/participation. There were so many kids out because they had COVID, or somebody in their household had COVID, they were exposed, or because of people passing, and different things. So they were students that I didn't see, for good portions of the year.
Attendance and participation.
And then I put all my stuff online so that they could follow along at home. So it was almost like an online course and an in-classroom course. And a lot of them, just to get them to make up the work, was just not happening.
Okay. Yeah, I can imagine. Did anyone have that issue also, having students handing work in? Has that been a issue? Yeah. We had recently, we did an essay contest, and those of you who are online can hear me. We had this White Rose essay contest, and the general response I get now. Luckily we had 280 essays submitted. I was really quite impressed, considering last year we had 60. And I'd like that. And Ms. Wheel, one of her students won last year.
Yeah, this year, I did not.
But the general response was students don't want to write. They don't want to write. If I can't get them to hand in a regular assignment, me giving them something else, how it's going to be difficult to get them to hand in anything. And of course, what that leads to is that 100 of the 200 that got submitted were from Lake Highland Prep. So and a lot of the private schools. So yay for Lake Highland Prep. I feel bad, but honestly, and I have to honestly, some of my responses though were phenomenal from Neelam Patel down at Dr. Phillips. Her students submitted some phenomenal essays, and that was Park High School, one of their IB programs submitted some essays. I really wanted to see the breadth. It was, again, we had the students, same things were here, responses to the Holocaust. And then students making relevant connections to, and when studying the Holocaust, how are they making these connections? What else does anyone want to share?
Like my biggest issue was like pacing, like
Pasting?
covering the content I needed to cover, and also trying to be responsive to students like the social learning needs, like, and all that, even just for myself, trying to balance taking care of myself and also taking care of, somewhere in there, some of the things that students do teach.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense. I mean, taking care of, so we did Orange County did a rollout for social emotional learning for students. We did a big piece, and at the district we had to do a meeting, it was a great session on social emotional learning. And I raised my hand in while I was being ignored online, because I'm way over here. I'm not actually in the downtown office, so I get ignored, which is really funny because one of the requirements was when you had these group meetings was to make sure everyone's voice was heard. And I sat there for a while going, hello, hello. And my was, so we're doing social emotional learning, which I agree with. I call it just relationship building within your class. It's just what we do every day. And most of us as professional educators have done, our whole lives. And it's important to count those needs. But what about the needs of the teachers? The social and emotional needs of the teachers and being heard. And I have to, I might have some home educators on online, but there are a lot of parents who unfortunately make a lot of assumptions about what teachers don't do and what they do. And when teachers get vilified and demonized very quickly. And I have yet to have gone into a class where I think an effective, we're going to use the more Marzano nomenclature, an effective educator, highly effective educator, does anything other than try to inspire critical thinking within their students. No, I don't know if anybody in here have time to indoctrinate? Anybody online? You got time to indoctrinate? I'm just curious. I know with all the extra time you've got is nothing more than, yeah, honestly, you ever have that time when you're making the lesson on the drive in, you're creating the lesson for the day. You're thinking about, this is how it's going to go. I did that this morning coming in, this is how it's going to go today. I was really happy when Dr. Behrman wanted to talk for a few hours because I was like, great, that's less for me to have to worry about. And I think it's really important though that, that we need support from administration, from staff, and from parents, and we can only control so much. We really can only control so much. And I really wanted to give everyone a chance to, talk about what their personal obstacles were within the classroom. Anybody have anything else you wanted to?
Mine is complete lack of interest. It doesn't matter what the lesson was, what we were doing, if we were active out of our seats, stations, anything like that. Just all I was on board.
And not only that, but just make sure the scores of the standardized tests are okay. So the other subjects don't matter, but yes.
Scores of the standardized tests. Yeah, that was one of the reasons I love teaching Holocaust studies, is no one cared what my scores were. But it was great but that also made your class a dumping ground as well. But at the same time, I think it's a good opportunity to reach students when I say dumping ground, that has a negative connotation, implying that I have students that I wouldn't want. It's students that you have to work harder at engaging, students that you have, and I think it's an opportunity to reach different students who might not normally see themselves in an academically, and rigorous class, a hard class that's talking about difficult history. But honestly, it was one of those classes where I think SEL is embedded in Holocaust education. If you're teaching it, I say there's no correct way, but if you're teaching it appropriately, I think it's really embedded in the humanizing in the lessons of the Holocaust, as well as many other courses. But oftentimes when you're teaching U.S. history or you're teaching APUSH or AP World or World History, you're going like this, ticking a box. I'm here. Am I on task? Am I on? When admin walks in, am I on the right benchmark? Am I in line with the rest of the other teachers? Or am I behind? Am I behind? Is someone going to come in and ding me because I'm taking some extra time to make sure that everyone in the class gets it? Well, now I'm being penalized. So for taking that extra, day or so to make sure that my students get it. I think one time I had an argument where there was a test. It was just a regular U.S. history EOC, and they had this blurry image, and it was of Lincoln sitting on the globe after the Civil War during Reconstruction and stitching the nation back together. Have you seen it? Him and Johnson, and he's stitching the. If anyone online has seen that. But I had students who were really confused by this little piece of this image because they didn't know what sewing was. They didn't know what sewing was. So the image meant nothing to them. It's not because they didn't understand what we had covered. They didn't know what sewing was. We're using analysis of political cartoons where students are like, I don't get this reference. What are these bottles that Roosevelt has next around? Oh, those are medicine bottles of like liquid, for the New Deal, things like that. Those of you who know what I'm talking about. So you've got a lot to consider, and there's a lot of things I'm seeing online. I think there's a lot of discussion that they're having online that I see, and those of you who are in, you can actually see within the chat. But we have issues where we're discussing. There's the new laws that are out. Everyone gets accused of teaching CRT. If you notice, or if you walked in through here and you saw our exhibit that's in here. It's Conversations for Change. It's a story of, and those of you who are online, I apologize for mentioning something or referencing something you cannot see. But the Conversations for Change is our Daryl Davis exhibit. And Daryl Davis managed to get 200 members of the Klan to renounce the Klan through discussion and conversation. We have pieces of teachers who are afraid to bring their students through because they don't want to be accused of teaching CRT. And I'm like, that's not really what that would be doing or referencing. That's an inappropriate usage of of what you think that is. But it's kind of crazy because now you're worried about whatever is said or done is going to be scrutinized under a microscope. Yeah, it gives new meaning to the term deliberate practice. And those are Marzano teachers who know how to get evaluated with deliberate practice. I mean, you really have to be very intentional with every word and everything you say, because it will be misconstrued. It will be taken out of context. It'll be filmed from someone secretly, like, holding this, camera. And there's not appropriate times, when someone is abusing students' rights or that can definitely be true. But there are times when it's not, and it's just kind of it's crazy. So I don't want to eat up much more of your time. I really want to give everyone time, but I hope you got time to know one another. I hope everyone online got time to know one another in your breakout sessions, and that you actually got something out of that session, because that's about the best thing we can really do. Is really to be there for one another. I'm really hoping that after you've all shown an interest in Holocaust education, we're hoping that after this week is over, that we can actually create a group of us to be there for one another, to provide resources, to provide connection, to share stories with, because there are a lot of things out there. And, one of the biggest things we can do is be a resource and asset to one another, because honestly, I mean, there are times in our own schools we're not going to get that support. There are times in our district we're not going to get that support. There are times that even in our own hallway with other teachers, we're alone in that hallway. I mean, some of you are, have a hallway full of friends. Was very fortunate. I had a hallway full of buddies and pals who didn't teach. Just kidding, everyone, if you're online watching me. But it was that was empowering. But when you're alone, it's hard, especially if you're teaching. I had teachers who joked about what I was teaching, my Holocaust studies class. I had people who made comments and who joked about, why are your kids coming to my class all depressed? After I'm like, well, we're learning about the Holocaust. Oh, well, I had one, speaking of, we're going to talk about anti-Semitism tomorrow, who made a comment, said, why don't you bring them down as a teacher who is, so I want you to take them down to the ceramics lab to look at the kilns.
Oh.
Those of you online, if you understand that reference. Yeah, this is, yeah. That horrifying. I mean, my mouth is open and I had to sit there and look and go, and in what world did you think that was appropriate? And the response was, it's not like you have any Jewish kids in your class. I said, well, one, does that matter? And number two, how do you know? And then I had to introduce, and then I introduced him to his roster where I said, and I introduced the three of his making comments like that in your classroom around your students. I said, because you might have thought you were being, funny. And I'm all for joking. I'm a joking person. And I've actually, Lord knows, and I mean that for real. I'm actually, I use a lot of things to mask my pain. Humor is one of them. So, but it's usually self-depreciation type of humor. But I think, that's something that's, you really have a lot of power with what you do in a classroom, and you have to think about, how it will impact your students and what things could be said that can be demoralizing and demeaning to your students. Everyone who's online, we're going to take a break. I will open up the lunch. If you want to just do a Q&A, if you want to join in the Q&A session, I would want to give everyone here time to go to lunch. We are going to start back at noon with Dr. Michael Berenbaum. I'm hoping he had no problem getting in. We had him all checked in. I haven't gotten a message that says, hey, I'm stuck. But when he comes in, he is doing a 3-hour session. So I want to give you guys time to get lunch. Everyone online, I want to give you time to get lunch as well. If you have any questions, please post them. If you have any questions in here, feel free to ask me. Hope you got time to know one another. And I'll look forward to seeing you all back at 11:55, not 12. Sound good? Is that enough time to kind of get out a little bit? Okay, thank you very much. I'll see y'all in a minute.
Thank you.